There are spiritual contracts that are formed long before we enter this life. They are sacred agreements between two souls who choose to meet in order to awaken each other. But what happens if one of these souls decides to break this contract on their own? What if she simply turns away from everything that was planned before birth? Perhaps you are here because you are living that very experience. Maybe you believe you found your twin flame, felt a recognition that went beyond logic, and lived a connection that seemed arranged by the universe itself. But then she disappeared. It was not a temporary separation. It was not fear. It felt as if she erased from memory everything you had built together on a spiritual level. What almost no one understands about broken soul contracts between twin flames is this. When it happens, it is not only your life circumstances that change. The very structure of reality around you begins to reorganize in ways you cannot yet fully understand. When a twin flame breaks the soul contract, 5 specific things begin to unfold in your life. Watch until the end, because the last one is so extraordinary that it can completely reshape how you understand destiny, free will, and life purpose. And if you have reached this stage in your spiritual path, consider subscribing, because what you are about to learn may permanently change how you view soul connections. A soul contract is not a romantic promise between two people destined to live happily ever after. It is far more complex and demanding. It occurs when two souls agree, before incarnating, to meet in this life in order to mutually catalyze specific processes of individuation. In essence, they sign a spiritual agreement to act as mirrors for one another, awakening aspects of consciousness that can only be activated through this precise connection. Jung observed through his studies of synchronicity that certain human relationships function beyond ordinary causal laws. They are guided by a principle of meaningful connection, where events that seem unrelated are linked not by cause and effect, but by shared significance. When two twin flames meet and recognize their soul contract, they activate a chain of synchronicities that can literally reshape their realities. Yet one essential truth must be understood. The bond between twin flames is eternal. It does not dissolve with time or human decisions, because it is rooted in soul energy and a larger divine plan. In this context, separation acts as a catalyst for awakening, guiding the soul toward healing, surrender, and self-knowledge. When Jung spoke of individuation, he emphasized that life's most transformative experiences often arrive disguised as profound losses. A soul contract frequently includes clauses that, if we could read them before birth, might make us hesitate to sign. It may involve periods of painful separation, deep rejection, and seemingly inexplicable abandonment. All of this can be part of the original agreement. But what if one twin flame decides during life that she no longer wishes to fulfill this contract? What if she develops such strong resistance to growth that she prefers to break the spiritual agreement rather than continue evolving? Jung suggested that this is not only possible, but more common than we imagine. And when it happens, the consequences go far beyond an ordinary breakup. Breaking a soul contract is not merely leaving another person. It is also a refusal of one's own evolutionary path. It is, in essence, a rejection of the plan the soul designed before incarnating. And such a decision does not go unnoticed by the universe. Carl Jung himself went through a similar experience when he definitively separated from Freud. It was not only the end of an intellectual collaboration. Jung later realized that a form of soul contract existed between them. Freud was meant to introduce him to the depths of the psyche, while Jung was meant to expand those teachings beyond Freudian limits. When Freud refused to accept Jung's discoveries about spirituality and the collective unconscious, The contract was effectively broken, and the consequences appeared immediately in both of their lives. Jung entered what he called a confrontation with the unconscious, a period in which he nearly lost his sanity while exploring the depths of his own psyche. Freud, in contrast, became increasingly rigid, holding tightly to his original theories and resisting further evolution. One grew profoundly through crisis, the other remained fixed by choice. This reveals the fundamental difference between someone who fulfills the contract despite the pain and someone who breaks it to avoid discomfort. One transforms, the other solidifies. One expands consciousness, the other restricts it. One accepts the path of evolution, the other rejects it. And when your twin flame breaks the soul contract between you, 5 specific phenomena begin to manifest in your reality, phenomena that Jung documented extensively and that illustrate how the universe responds when spiritual agreements are unilaterally violated. The first thing that occurs is what Jung might describe as a state of archetypal orphanhood. This is a very particular feeling that goes far beyond the normal pain of a breakup. It is as if a core part of your cosmic identity has been removed. You do not simply feel that you lost someone special. You feel as though you lost a part of yourself that existed even before you met. Jung believed that when two souls make a contract before incarnation, they become complementary aspects of the same spiritual unit, not as romantic halves, but as carriers of specific dimensions of consciousness that can only be fully activated through mutual interaction. It is like two keys that together open a specific door in reality. When one of these souls breaks the contract, you are left holding your key, but without the lock that allows you to use it. You sense within yourself vast potentials awakened by twin flame recognition, yet now without a clear path for full expression. It can feel like possessing only half of a spiritual genetic code. This archetypal orphanhood appears in very distinct ways. You may wake up with a deep sense of existential emptiness that no activity can fill. You may feel as though you are living a life that is not entirely yours, like performing in a play where the other lead actor left midway. You know you are meant to accomplish something important in this world, but you cannot clearly define it because the mission seemed to depend on the other person for completion. This orphanhood also expresses itself as a persistent cosmic nostalgia. It is not only a longing for the person, although that exists too. It is a longing for the state of being you experienced when you were together, a way of existing that felt more real, more authentic, and more aligned with your true self. It is as if you briefly touched paradise and now must live with the awareness that it exists, but without access to it. Jung observed that individuals in such a state often develop a form of painful clairvoyance. They start to perceive with unusual clarity when others are living out genuine soul contracts, when relationships are superficial rather than profound, and when people are authentic versus merely playing roles. Losing one's own authentic connection seems to sharpen the ability to detect authenticity or illusion in others. This heightened perception can be both a gift and a burden. On one side, it grants deep insight into human relationships that few possess. On the other, it becomes difficult to accept shallow or conventional bonds. You become aware of what true intimacy and mutual recognition can be, and anything less may feel bland, artificial, or insufficient. During this first phase, it is common to question your own sanity. You might wonder whether the soul contract truly existed, whether it was only imagination, or whether you idealized a connection that was actually ordinary. Jung warned that such doubt is part of the process. When something genuinely transcendent is lost, the rational mind attempts to minimize the loss, in order to make it easier to bear. It is important to recognize that archetypal orphanhood is not a pathology. It is a natural and even healthy response to the violation of a deep spiritual agreement. Your soul is grieving not only the loss of the person, but also the interruption of an evolutionary plan that had been carefully formed before incarnation. It is grief for a future that was meant to unfold, but was unilaterally cancelled. The second manifestation is even more confusing. You may begin to experience what Jung would call temporal interference within your personal timeline. It feels as though breaking the contract created fractures in the structure of your destiny, causing events that were meant to occur in a particular sequence to appear fragmented or out of order. Jung studied synchronicity in depth and found that when two souls operate within an active spiritual contract, their lives tend to unfold according to precise synchronistic patterns. Events that seem unrelated coordinate almost perfectly, creating opportunities for meeting, growth, and mutual fulfillment. It is as if the universe once coordinated events to keep both souls aligned with the fulfillment of their contract. But when one soul breaks the agreement, this cosmic coordination begins to collapse. You may start noticing unusual coincidences that seem to guide you back toward the person who left, yet they always arrive too late or at the wrong moment. It feels as though the universe is still attempting to fulfill the original plan, but without cooperation from the other side, these attempts become misaligned and often painful. For instance, you might hear news about her just when you were beginning to move forward. You might encounter mutual friends at the exact time your emotional wounds were starting to heal. You might dream about her intensely, just when you believed you had finally overcome the bond. These are not indications that you should reunite. Rather, they are fragments of disrupted synchronicity trying to manifest despite the absence of receptivity from the other side. Temporal interference can also appear as a persistent sense of living out of sync with your own life. You may feel either ahead of or behind where you believe you should be. This occurs because the soul contract included a specific sequence of events and stages of growth. When it is broken, you continue to operate internally according to that sequence, even though externally it no longer unfolds. You might unconsciously prepare for developments that never happen, or be surprised by changes you would have expected if the contract had remained intact. It resembles performing a complex dance after your partner has suddenly left the stage, leaving you continuing movements that only made sense together. Jung noted that such temporal disturbances can last for years after a contract is broken. It is as though the energetic field surrounding your life requires time to reorganize for a new reality in which the soul functions independently rather than within a shared agreement. During this period of reorganization, you may encounter relationships or opportunities that resemble what was meant to be, yet never fully match it. This can be deeply disorienting. You may start questioning your intuition, your judgment, and even your understanding of how life unfolds. However, nothing is inherently wrong with you. You are simply navigating the effects of an event that operates beyond ordinary cause and effect principles. It is during these temporal disturbances that many individuals develop what Jung would call a trans-temporal perspective. They begin to recognize that multiple forms of time operate simultaneously: chronological time measured by clocks, psychological time shaped by emotions and memories, and spiritual time governed by soul contracts and evolutionary purposes. The breaking of the contract forces awareness of how these different dimensions of time interact and sometimes conflict. The third consequence is perhaps the most mysterious and unsettling. You may develop what Jung might describe as a spectral perception of the absent soul. Just even after the conscious breaking of the contract, A portion of the other person's soul can seem energetically connected to you, like a presence that can be felt, but not reached. Jung studied projection and transference extensively, yet he also observed that soul contracts create a unique psychic bond. When two souls agree before incarnation, aspects of their energetic fields become interwoven. While the contract is active, this bond supports telepathic resonance, synchronicity, and immediate recognition. When the contract is broken, the connection does not disappear completely. It transforms into what Jung would call a shared autonomous complex. Spectral perception can manifest in various puzzling ways. You might wake with the strong sense that she was present during the night, even though rationally you know this is impossible. You may feel her emotions as if they were your own, particularly during moments of crisis or major decisions in her life. You might suddenly gain insights about situations she could be facing, as if information arrives through channels beyond the five senses. This experience is not merely imagination or fantasy. Jung documented cases in which individuals maintained precise psychic awareness linked to former deep connections. It is as if the aspect of her soul, once intertwined with yours, continues to transmit fragments of experience, now without conscious mediation from her personality. One of the most difficult aspects of this perception is sensing when she is actively suppressing or denying the original bond. It may feel as though you are aware of her effort to erase shared memories, to convince herself the connection was ordinary, and to move on as though the contract never existed. Experiencing this denial can resemble observing a slow inner disconnection, where she restricts parts of her own consciousness in order to maintain that decision. Jung suggested that when someone deliberately breaks a profound inner agreement, they often repress essential aspects of themselves to support that choice. They may reduce their openness to spiritual perception and reinterpret transcendent experiences as illusions. Through spectral perception, you may sense this reduction in real time. This awareness can become a continuous source of emotional strain because you seem to witness the gradual diminishment of someone you care about while being unable to intervene. It is like observing a person methodically limiting their own ability to perceive meaning, recognize synchronicities, or engage with deeper layers of existence. Spectral perception may also appear in recurring dreams, where you meet within parallel scenarios, realities in which the contract was never broken and growth continued together. These dreams often feel different from ordinary ones, as if they were glimpses into alternative possibilities that once truly existed. Your psyche seems to access the original blueprint of a shared reality that was meant to unfold. Jung would interpret these dreams as efforts by the collective unconscious to preserve the memory of the initial plan, even when one person consciously abandoned it. It is as if a symbolic archive of all soul agreements still exists, and you retain access to the record of the broken contract, even though you can no longer implement it. During this phase, it is essential to understand that you are not losing sanity or clinging to illusions. Spectral perception can emerge when profound energetic bonds are abruptly severed. You are perceiving fragments of an energetic reality that continues to exist beyond the physical separation. The task is to live with this awareness without allowing it to immobilize you or prevent forward movement. The fourth manifestation is both the most painful and the most liberating. You may experience what Jung would call a forced acceleration of individuation. When a twin flame breaks the soul contract, the evolutionary process intended to occur through partnership is not simply cancelled. Instead, it is redirected inward, requiring you to develop alone and at a much faster pace what was meant to unfold through shared interaction. Jung described individuation as the process through which a person becomes psychologically whole by integrating conscious and unconscious elements of the personality. Under normal conditions, this unfolds gradually across many years through life experiences, relationships, challenges, and insights that slowly build maturity. However, when a soul contract is broken, the process intensifies dramatically. It is as if life demands, if growth cannot occur together, it must occur individually and quickly. This forced acceleration may appear as a series of simultaneous crises that would normally be spread across decades. You might begin questioning your career path, spiritual beliefs, core values, life decisions, family dynamics, relational patterns, and even your sense of purpose all at once. It feels as though every dimension of your identity that required evolution becomes activated simultaneously. This simultaneity can be overwhelming. In ordinary circumstances, you would address one issue at a time and gradually integrate each realization before facing the next challenge. In accelerated individuation, multiple transformations occur in parallel, resembling years of deep psychological work condensed into a short period. Jung observed that individuals undergoing such acceleration often report intense transpersonal or mystical experiences. The psychological pressure created by rapid growth seems to open channels of perception that usually remain closed. You may gain profound insights about the nature of reality, experience vivid symbolic dreams, recognize recurring life patterns, and access knowledge that seems to extend beyond personal experience. This expansion can be both inspiring and unsettling. On one side, you access levels of understanding and awareness that many people reach only after decades. On the other, you may feel disconnected from ordinary consensus reality, as though perceiving truths that others around you cannot easily comprehend. Forced acceleration frequently includes what Jung described as an intense confrontation with the shadow. Aspects of yourself that were previously denied, repressed, or ignored become impossible to overlook. You may recognize destructive habits, unresolved wounds, defensive reactions, and unconscious projections with striking clarity. It is like a bright light illuminating every hidden corner of the psyche at once. This confrontation can be deeply painful. You might become aware of traits you would rather not acknowledge, notice patterns that have caused harm to others, and accept responsibilities you previously avoided. Yet Jung emphasized that confronting the shadow, although difficult, is essential for forming an authentic and integrated personality. During this phase, you may also experience what Jung called enantiodromia, the transformation of qualities into their opposites. Stable personality traits may suddenly reverse. A highly controlled person may become impulsive. A very emotional person may appear emotionally distant, and someone once dependent in relationships may struggle to engage in intimacy. These reversals are not necessarily pathological. They represent attempts by the psyche to find a new equilibrium after the disruption of a central life plan. It is as though the soul experiments with different identities to discover who you truly are without being defined by a shared contract. The most demanding aspect of this acceleration is that it largely unfolds in solitude. The individual who was meant to accompany and support this growth chose to withdraw, leaving you to develop inner strength and resources independently. Yet there is an extraordinary outcome. Many who pass through accelerated individuation emerge with unusual resilience, clarity, and authenticity. They attain a degree of inner completeness that usually requires decades of conscious effort. It is as if they matured spiritually at an accelerated pace. Jung might interpret this as a form of cosmic compensation. The opportunity to grow through partnership was lost, but the opportunity to cultivate deep self-sufficiency and integrity was gained. You become whole not through balance with another, but through the full integration of your own personality. The fifth and most remarkable consequence is what Jung would describe as the awakening of the oracular function. This refers to the development of a perception that transcends ordinary temporal and spatial limits, allowing you to detect patterns, connections, and future possibilities with unusual clarity. Jung studied individuals who developed intuitive or divinatory sensitivity after intense psychological trauma and noted that the breaking of deep soul agreements can act as a powerful catalyst for such awakening. It is as if the pain of a violated spiritual plan forces consciousness to expand toward the dimension where such plans originate and can be directly sensed. This function does not manifest as exaggerated supernatural ability. Instead, it appears as highly refined intuition regarding human behavior, hidden motivations, and likely future developments. You may begin to perceive when people are engaged in meaningful soul-level connections and when they are involved in more superficial dynamics. You may sense with surprising accuracy when someone is approaching a decision that will significantly alter the course of their life. This awareness becomes especially strong when observing individuals who are experiencing situations similar to your own. It feels as though you have developed a subtle sensitivity for recognizing souls navigating the complex terrain of spiritual contracts, whether those agreements are being fulfilled, challenged, or broken. As a result, you may offer insights and guidance that seem to arise from a depth of wisdom extending beyond your personal history. The oracular function also appears through prophetic dreams that carry unusual clarity and precision. These are not merely symbolic dreams requiring interpretation. Instead, they present direct visions of possible future events, particularly those connected to individuals undergoing their own spiritual development. It can feel as though your soul has gained access to a dimension where time is nonlinear and multiple future outcomes coexist simultaneously. Jung observed that people who develop this function often begin to attract others standing at critical turning points in their spiritual journeys. It is as if they radiate a distinct frequency that resonates with souls seeking guidance, reassurance, or confirmation about their own transcendent experiences. You may notice that you have become a magnet for individuals experiencing twin flame connections, soul agreements, mystical awakenings, or spiritual crises. This attraction is not random. Jung understood that when a soul undergoes accelerated individuation, it acquires a type of wisdom that only emerges from directly confronting the most demanding territories of human growth. Other souls moving through similar stages unconsciously sense this depth and are drawn to it as a source of insight and validation. The oracular function also involves heightened perception of karmic patterns shaping human relationships. You may begin to recognize when people are repeating dynamics rooted in past experiences, when they are fulfilling long-standing spiritual agreements, or when they are caught in cycles that must eventually be broken for evolution to occur. It becomes as though you can perceive invisible layers of meaning behind the seemingly random dramas of everyday life. Initially, this awareness can feel unsettling, especially when you clearly observe harmful patterns in people you care about. Yet, with time, you understand that they must live through these patterns to learn specific lessons. You develop a compassion that goes beyond the urge to rescue or fix others, recognizing that each soul follows its own timeline of growth, even when that path includes avoidable suffering. This function often arrives with an unconscious capacity for channeling insight. You might find yourself speaking words that seem to arise from a deeper level than your conscious mind, offering perspectives that even surprise you. It can feel as if you temporarily become a conduit for collective wisdom that extends beyond your personal history. Developing this ability is not compensation for losing your twin flame. Rather, it is a natural expansion of consciousness, pushed beyond its usual limits. These capacities do not replace what was lost. They emerge because the intensity of your experience opened perceptual channels that always existed within you in potential form. One of the most remarkable aspects of the oracular function is that it frequently brings direct understanding of the soul contract process itself. You may begin intuitively sensing how such agreements are formed, why they are sometimes broken, what spiritual consequences accompany different decisions, and how the universe responds when original plans cannot be completed. It can feel as though you have accessed a symbolic cosmic archive where these dynamics are recorded and comprehended. At first, this understanding may feel overwhelming because you simultaneously grasp the depth of what was lost and the significance of what was gained through that loss. You realize that your personal experience belongs to a larger pattern in the evolution of human consciousness, where certain souls accept the most difficult paths of spiritual growth so they can later guide others facing similar trials. When these 5 manifestations of a broken soul contract are fully integrated, a profound realization often emerges. You recognize that you were not abandoned by the universe when your twin flame ended the agreement. Instead, you were invited to operate at a different level of spiritual development. You were called to cultivate capacities and wisdom that many people never need to develop because their lives unfold along more conventional paths. Jung would describe this transformation as becoming a wounded healer, someone who gains the ability to assist others precisely through direct experience of the deepest forms of psychological pain. Your suffering was not meaningless. It was transformed into understanding. The experience of abandonment was not merely rejection. It functioned as initiation. The loneliness you endured was not punishment. It became preparation for a type of service that only someone who has traversed the darkest territories of the psyche and emerged integrated can offer. Breaking the contract did not end your spiritual narrative. It began a chapter that would never have been written if life had remained easy. You did not simply lose your twin flame. You discovered the capacity to become a complete flame on your own, capable of illuminating the path for other souls navigating their own developmental struggles. Perhaps, in the end, that was the deeper contract of your soul, not to remain permanently bound to one person, but to grow to a level where you could serve as a source of clarity and hope for many others encountering similar experiences. It is possible that your twin flame ended the agreement not because love was absent, but because at a deeper level it was known that you were strong enough to transform that rupture into the foundation of a greater spiritual purpose. Jung believed that some of humanity's most meaningful contributions to consciousness arise from individuals who, through circumstances rather than preference, are compelled to cultivate extraordinary inner strength. You have joined this group not by deliberate choice, but through necessity, and once these capacities are developed, they cannot be taken away regardless of future events. If you recognized your own journey in this discussion and felt that these ideas reflected your personal experience, then consider the possibility of further integrating these insights so they become stable aspects of your growth. Tools that support reflection, shadow integration, and dialogue with the unconscious can help transform psychological pain into constructive wisdom over time. Even when the spiritual meaning of your experience becomes clearer, there will still be difficult days when endurance feels challenging. Practical psychological strategies grounded in depth psychology can assist in navigating those periods and maintaining progress when doubt arises about whether such pain can truly evolve into wisdom. Reflect on what has been shared and ask yourself whether your experience forms part of a larger developmental purpose. Only a small number of people who endure the breaking of deep soul agreements manage to transform the experience into integrated wisdom rather than unresolved trauma. This is not because transformation is impossible, but because many remain trapped in self-victimization instead of accepting responsibility for their own inner development. The fact that you have reflected this far suggests that your psyche recognizes your capacity to move toward integration rather than stagnation. Thank you for engaging with these complex and often challenging dimensions of human psychological experience. In future explorations, we will continue examining the deeper layers of the human psyche through the perspective of Carl Jung's analytical psychology and its implications for personal transformation.